I want to be careful with these words, not because I am uncertain about what I am going to tell you. I am not uncertain. I have lived with these events for most of my life, carried them the way you carry anything that is true and enormous and does not fit inside the ordinary conversation of ordinary days. And I have arrived finally at the place where I am done being careful about who knows. These things happened to me, all of them, and I am going to tell you everyone. The first story begins at an airport. It is late evening, the kind of late evening where the light has gone out of the world, and what remains is the low amber glow of runway lights stretching into darkness. I am standing at the end of the runway. It may have been my father's airport to manage, the Albany airport, and standing before me are three creatures, approximately 4 feet tall, two of them blue, one on either side of the one in the middle. The one in the middle is white, glowing, blue-white, the color of something that generates its own light, and from the top of his head 2 antennae rise with the organic elegance of things that belong exactly where they are. He speaks to me, not with his mouth, with his mind, directly, clearly, without the interference of language. He tells me he is from Andromeda, that he is an ambassador, and then he tells me a long story, a story about a man who lives in his circumstances without the power to change them, drifting through his life as though the current of it is something that happens to him rather than something he chooses. At the end of the story, he says something I have turned over in my mind thousands of times since. He says, "It doesn't have to be this way." I understood eventually that the man in the story was me. The second story involves my mother. One night a great light came over our house. I remember it through my bedroom window, not the light of anything manufactured, not the light of any vehicle or aircraft, a light that had presence, that had weight, that was doing something rather than simply illuminating. The next morning, my mother gathered us together, 4 of us at the time. She sat us down with the composure of a woman who has decided that the truth, however large it is, belongs to her children. She said, "Last night someone came, someone visited us, and someone went with them," and then she looked directly at me. I don't have complete memory of what followed. What I know is that for the 2 weeks after that night, I had nosebleeds that did not stop. I know what I believe happened. I have known for a long time. The third story is the hardest to put into words, not because it was frightening, because the vocabulary for it does not exist in English, and possibly not in any human language. I was in my adolescence. I had been reading intensely, history, Eastern and Western, in the dark, the way you read when what you're looking for is not information but understanding, and what I found in all of that history was not reassuring. It read too much like an unfolding play, a play in which the characters had little or no control over their own lives, in which the same patterns repeated, in which something enormous was moving beneath the surface of everything recorded, and the people living through it could not see it any more than water can see the riverbed. I was sitting on the edge of my bed when the light came into my room. I cannot tell you where it came from. It had no source. It was simply there, filling the room, filling me, and it was 2 things simultaneously that I had not understood before. That moment could exist simultaneously: infinite intelligence, infinite love. It engulfed me completely, every cell, every thought, every question I had ever carried. And then, just as suddenly as it had arrived, it left. I have been riding toward that moment ever since. I had been camping for 3 days at Panther Meadows on Mount Shasta, drinking the pure water of the mountain for spiritual reasons. Nothing happened. On the 4th day, early 6 in the morning, I came down the mountain and began walking toward town. To my right was the mountain, and then the sound came. I have no words for this sound. What I can tell you is that it was not a sound in the ordinary sense. It was a vibration that surrounded me so completely that I needed to cover my ears against it. And still it was inside me as much as outside, growing louder and more present, until it did something that I can only describe exactly as it happened. It split me in half, spiritually, completely. For at least 2 minutes, I was divided from myself, whatever that means, and I know what it means, even if I cannot make you feel it through words, and then it put me back together again. And afterward, I felt better than I had felt in years. The tales of Mount Shasta's spirituality are real. I am telling you this as a man who has been there. Take them seriously. The second thing that happened on Mount Shasta was at the boulder field at Panther Meadow. I lay back among the rocks and looked up at the sky. Above me, the clouds had formed, with a precision that I can only call deliberate because randomness does not produce this kind of exactness, into a king, standing behind a lectern, and before the king, a man presenting him with a book. I lay there and stared for a long time. I do not know to this day whether that was the Book of Life. What I know is that in 1989, I gave away a novel I had worked on for 10 years to the early internet before most of the world knew the internet existed. The book was called The Ross Factor, What Became Moby and Ahab on a Plutonium Sea. I know the mountain knew me. I have believed for a long time that the book in that cloud formation was mine. The sixth story is about a hypnotist. I had been thinking for some time about a political thriller. I wanted to see whether hypnosis could help the creative process move faster. He hypnotized me. When I came out, he told me something I have never forgotten. He said I went deeper than any subject he had ever worked with. In 30 years of practice, I went home, and I completed work on a book that should have taken months in one sitting, from a place inside myself that I did not know how to access consciously, but that it turned out was always there, waiting. The subconscious mind is the most extraordinary technology on this planet. I have been in awe of it ever since. The seventh story I share with humility and with the full awareness of how it sounds. I attended a deep tissue massage workshop designed to recover memories of past lives. The therapist was extraordinarily skilled, and during the session I had a vision so real, so precise, so physically present, that it was not a vision in the ordinary sense of something seen in the mind. I placed the crown of thorns on Jesus' head. I could not speak for half an hour afterward. I sat in deep shock, in a state that had no name in my vocabulary, and someone near me said quietly that it was considered a great honor to carry such a vision. I do not know what to make of it still. I know only that it happened and that it was real. The eighth story I have told before, and I will keep telling it for as long as I am alive to speak. A dentist poisoned me. I don't know exactly how it was arranged or who signed what needed to be signed. I know that I left that dental chair carrying something inside me that had no business being there. And days later, crossing a field near my home, my body began to fail. I barely made it to my bed. I lay on my back and understood, with the absolute clarity that only arrives at the worst possible moments, that something was very wrong inside me. And then the light came. A craft hovered over my house in the silent dark, silent as a held breath, patient as starlight, and the light came through the roof, not breaking through it, as though the roof were a suggestion that more advanced physics had long since moved beyond. I was lifted off the bed twice, and each time I felt something leaving my body, drawn out with a precision and a deliberateness that I can only describe as medical. The poison, whatever had been introduced into me in that dental chair, was being removed, as cleanly as a splinter drawn from a wound by hands that knew exactly what they were doing. I believe it was a Saurian medical vessel. I am alive today because of what came that night. The ninth story begins on July 25th, 1990, 1 mile up the Gualla River on the north-central California coast. I was tending a friend's garden. No one came up that road. 3 buildings in the area, all empty in summer. Above the garden on a high hill, the Navy had built a 9-story radar tower of extraordinary power, pointed out over the ocean. Dr. Fred Bell told me more than 100 ships an hour were coming in from that coast. He quit his work there because of it. Nothing in the garden was healthy. Everything had stunted growth. The air felt wrong in a way I could feel in my body. I became depressed, seriously, completely depressed, and I made a large jar of hemlock tea that I intended to drink in the morning. I went to sleep in my tent. Before I was taken, a ball of intense energy came over the tent. It was trying to make me leave. It made a sound, woo, 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 3 times, pressuring me, demanding me to go. I refused. I said I would not leave. It stopped. I fell asleep from exhaustion, and then 2 beings were on either side of me, carrying me, floating me, levitating me into a ship that was already above us in the dark above the Gualla River. They said, "You are going to meet the general." The general was beautiful, blue-green, mottled with gold, dinosaurian in form, and this is why I call them Saurians. A thick, powerful tail, arms crossed to show me the strength in them, which was extraordinary. He was telepathic, and I was telepathic, and we understood each other immediately and completely, the way that beings understand each other when they are speaking below the level of language, in the register where truth is simply exchanged without the distortion of words. He liked me. I liked him. Above my head, a floating wing, white and blue metallic, appeared. It made a sound 3 times, ooh, ooh, ooh. And then I remember nothing more until I woke in my tent as the sun came up. I began walking into town at 6 in the morning. A van came up the road that no one drove, at 6 in the morning. The driver said he had had a dream and felt he needed to come. I told him a little about what had happened to me. He said, "Those aliens are from the time of Egypt. They have hawks on their backs." I did not fully understand that then. I have thought about it every year since. 9 stories, 1 life. What do I conclude from all of this? That we are not alone in this universe, and that we have never been. That the beings who have made themselves known to me are not random, not accidental, not figments. They are extraordinarily advanced, medically, technologically, in ways that make our fastest progress look like the first steps of a child who is just learning to walk. That what we call God has interesting ways of nudging we small and stubborn and extraordinary humans towards something larger than ourselves. Ray Kurzweil, the scientist and futurist, believes that by 2029 or 2030, humankind will be able to upload the mind into the cloud. He may be right about the mind, but I do not believe he is right about the soul. And I think that distinction, the difference between the mind and the soul, is the most important question any of us will face in the years ahead. Physical immortality of the mind, or leaving the soul's journey to something older and wiser and far more patient than any technology we have yet built. I know which way I am leaning. I am still here, still writing, still carrying these 9 stories into every room I enter. And my deepest wish, the one I have held for more than 30 years, is to one day hear from others who have been visited, especially those who have encountered the Saurians, especially those who know the Andromedans. You are not alone either. I promise you that. Watch the skies and never stop asking questions.